Hello and welcome to OT, the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time, and how to spend it. I'm Felix Schultz.
And I'm Andy Green. How you going, Felix?
I'm doing pretty well, Andy. How are you going?
Not too bad. I'm pretty excited about today's guest, I must say.
He got fired up in this one. It's good, always good to see Spicy Andy on the calls.
You know what?
Yep.
If you pitched it to me, well, which you did, the guest, the first job, less exciting than the side hustle, which I found very interesting and exciting.
Yeah, this is fascinating. So we're talking to a gentleman named Sylvain Berneron, who has, as you've alluded, Andy, two significant jobs in the watch industry. One, he is he has a change of title. I'm not 100% sure what it is. Head of Breitling's design, basically. Which is a very important job, pretty executive at a major Swiss watch brand. But he's also, on the weekend, found some time to launch his own brand, Berneron Watches. And that's what we're talking about with him mostly today.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. You have to wait for that. I was gonna come in here with some sort of broken arm puns, Felix, but I didn't think you would find them humorous.
Yeah. I broke my arm. I fractured. Is a break a fracture? I saw a doctor today. I should have clarified that, but I didn't.
It's a grey area. We'll give you the break. It's your watch wearing arm though, right?
It is. Yes, I'm left-handed. I wear my watches on my left hand. It's a terrible situation. But this ties in actually to something that I've been up to. I went and saw Breguet.
Yeah, right.
Earlier this week, saw some of their novelties, including the new pilots.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It was a very rainy day, and slightly before seeing Breguet, I fell and broke my arm, but I didn't know that. I just went to the appointment like the champion that I am.
Mad dogged it, you absolute tough white man.
My love of horology worked through the pain. Actually, no, I was out of that interview, that sort of chat. It was pretty off tap, but I should put up some sort of blurry, shaky, pain-induced pictures. The new pilots are cool, but the pick for me is the classic. They've got a new sort of complete calendar that's really nice, just a really nice dress watch that's Breguet doing what Breguet does best, and that's good enough for me, to be honest.
Well, their big release was sort of the Type 20.
Yes.
For this year, that probably hogged it all.
And that's what I saw. So, I should have explained that a bit clearer. I saw this year's releases, like they're sort of, got sort of some carnet of it all, and they're showing it off. And the pilot's pretty good. I like the military one with the sort of the greenier tint and the less heavy photina on it.
I think that's there's the Type 20 and then there's the Type XX, which is 20 as well.
Yes, the Type 20 is the one sort of aimed at military design inspiration, and then there's the XX, which is the other one.
The minty green, different crowns, different handsets, different dial colours. Yep. So you're slinged up with that. Shouldn't slow me down too much, except for my one finger typing. Well, I was going to ask a watch-related question.
Please do.
So its wrist is up against the chest in a sling. Would an asymmetric make life easier? Are you wearing a watch? What angle dial would hit the right angle? Would a Berneron?
Maybe. Honestly, I'm not wearing a watch. It's irritating enough. I don't want a watch on there as well. Maybe I'll right wrist it, but I'm at home most of the time anyway. I've got phones. I've got clocks.
My last insensitive comment. You weren't wearing the new Apple Watch Ultra with fall detection?
Oh, my Lord, I should have. No, I wasn't, because I was going to a client meeting. I think I was wearing a grown-up watch. Luckily, though, I didn't even think about this. I think I was wearing the Grand Seiko, which is quartz. So no damage to the balance or anything either.
Probably on a NATO strap as well, so you didn't scuff anything up.
No, bracelet. It was on bracelet.
Oh. But you kind of took it on the hand and just...
I did, yeah.
Sent shockwaves.
I worked out from the doctor there's an acronym for it, all the medical professionals in our Discord can correct me. Foch
Okay.
fell on outstretched hand.
Ooh, so you call yourself, yeah, painful
No,
stuff.
that's in the notes. They just go Foch.
Fosh.
Male, blah, 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 blah. Foch,
Happens a bit. Well,
apparently.
you get knocked down, you get back up again.
Yep. You can tub thump and chumbawamba me. Speaking of, this is a segue. This is, we haven't heard any tub thumping yet, but I started watching a documentary that I suspect a lot of people are going to be watching in the next coming weeks. Started watching Beckham.
Yeah, it looks good. No, I've got the TikTok about the David asking.
Humble upbringing.
Yeah, the humble upbringing. He's just like, aside from the actual answer, the way that he kind of keeps Victoria accountable, and it was kind of polite, and he kept it humorous. Like he didn't. It was nothing short of inspirational how he banters with his wife in that moment.
So I won't spoil it for you. Like I mean, I don't know. Not that you can necessarily spoil it, but I won't give too much sort of away of the narrative journey they take. But there are a few things that are remarkable to me about it. One, keeping it watch related. Even in the early days, he's got a nice watch on the wrist. Like when he was sort of starting out in the sort of mid 90s as a breakout star. Two, it is wild the amount of archival footage that exists for both of them, because they were both so famous. They can talk about, like, they'll have an interview and he'll say, I went to the thing this one day and, I wondered about that. And then they will cut to footage of that actual thing.
I always find it wild that like the people can find it. I mean, it makes sense. It's easy to forget with someone like David Beckham not being in a country where football/soccer is so enormous, just how famous he is. But he has got to be one of the most recognisable, famous people on the planet.
And arguably, I would say his wife is more famous.
Oh, no, I think soccer has such a big, broad appeal, both from age, demographics and geographic standpoint.
No, and maybe this is something they'll address later on, but she was certainly in the 90s, she was a big deal.
Yeah, but he has maintained it. I mean, if you look at like the biggest stars of all time now, the top 3 or 4 are always going to be kind of current soccer players or football players. So I find it really interesting because it's just, kids through to, people in their 80s and 90s still can obsess over it. It's not super manly these days, can appeal to all genders. But I think he's just done such a good job at holding himself after kind of finishing that part of his career.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think consistently they've apparently been lovely. Like I was talking to my partner, and we lived in London for like 6 months or a year or something in the 2008 or something like that. Earlier than that, I can't remember. And she used to work in a bougie part of London for like bougie people, and had like famous clients. And she used to talk to it was in like Sloane Square. And like they would talk with all like the other sort of people at the bars and stuff. The people, other people did things and, encountered the Beckhams. Always lovely. So,
They seem like good people.
I think that matters. I think that's part of that, longevity.
Speaking of longevity, you've been putting the work in other ways.
I've been doing, it's been a discussion on the Discord a bit. It's been a discussion here a little bit. I finally joined Team PS5.
Great.
And so I've been putting in the work with Baldur's Gate 3.
Just playing one-handed at the moment, or?
It's quite good because this is an unexpected benefit. It's turn-based. All the critical stuff is.
Oh.
So I don't have to be like quick response.
You've got a team together, or are you playing by yourself?
Solo at the moment, but there's a little gang of little dudes. Actually,
maybe I'll have to download it and we can get through this.
I've been chatting with Nick. We've been messaging. But I haven't yet encountered some of the talented voice actors like J.K. Simmons or Jason Isaacs.
Yet.
Who show up.
Oh, very good, very good. I have, you know what I did yesterday, Felix?
What did you do? What did you do yesterday, Andy?
I accidentally watched 240 minutes of YouTube, like a single video. I didn't finish it all. I finished the last 45 minutes this morning with my extended breakfast, but I was just watching kind of a YouTuber who I subscribe to named Matt Armstrong. He's kind of a guy who gets wrecked cars in the UK and then he rebuilds them himself. And he's kind of got a lot of momentum lately. Like he'll buy a written off car and then without any kind of formal training and a bit of help from people around him, put it all back together in his own way. And he kind of documents it. So if you're on TikTok, you start getting fed these like little 9-minute snippets and it's in like 50 parts.
Yep.
In YouTube, he would kind of do it every week. He'd do an update of, the things that are going on. And he's just a nice guy. Anyway, I put on a video and it turned out it was the compilation of, I think 9-10 parts of his rebuild of a Porsche 718 Cayman S. Nice. And the car was absolutely wrecked at the start. But you know what? I was watching it. This is a bit longer than normal. That's weird. And I just kept going.
Dark outside.
It just kept going. It was like, then I realized when I paused it to rehydrate and get a snack because it's been an hour that I was watching the compilation of it all. But man, the work to, do all that, put it all in together it's pretty impressive. So here's Matt Armstrong.
No, sorry. This was just me putting my hand up to say I had something to mention about that. It's not an immediate issue.
Oh, Matt Armstrong UK. He's a lovely, talented guy. Highly recommend you check him out.
You mentioned the old accidental watching, and this is more of an aside rather than anything else. I noticed a headline that Paramount is apparently releasing Mean Girls on TikTok.
They have. It's up.
The whole movie.
The whole movie.
I don't know about, there are many times where I've been, the algorithm's like, Felix, you should really watch Gladiator again. Think about the Roman Empire. I'm like, you know what? After I see the scene 4 times in a row, I'm like, maybe I will go watch Gladiator again.
It's smart. Yeah, everything's everywhere online anyway. So there would be people that would watch it for the first time in TikTok format. I mean, it's just not ideal. It's not even like a thing where you have to rotate your phone. It's up there cropped. But that's
usually
how the kids...
with someone cutting soap underneath or something.
Yeah. Because our attention spans are just abysmal. Speaking of attention spans, something caught my attention that just happened. It was a Hodinkee photo essay from Laguna Seca, which is like a big kind of car situation over in the US. It's one of the things that I kind of find funny was the title had like 140 plus pics. Not that I think Hodinkee need to kind of go into that mode, but the opening pic is a picture of Jerry Seinfeld with his Carrera GT, very rare, very expensive car. Next picture is a picture of his watch. So the crew got close enough to kind of obviously have a quick chat with him, take some photos. What I liked about this is an event with like 100,000 people turn up. Classic cars, new cars, old watches, new watches, sponsorships, all sorts of stuff. It's like kind of like Goodwood in the States. But it was a real kind of like behind the scenes. Like this is how I imagine Ben going to a car event. And kind of the access, like there's photos of and with, Dwayne Wade, NBA player, which is just like getting close enough to be like, hey, can I take a picture of your watch? I kind of, work for Hodinkee, I mean, there's Dr. Wolfgang Porsche with his son as well. The photos themselves are quite nice. Some of the wrist shots are like they capture the moment and the watch and the wearer. Like they're not the best photos, but to me, that's sort of realistic and what it's like.
Shout out to Mark Kozlarich.
Yeah. Like, it's an absolute churn. Like he would have just been running around, saying hi, taking photos. You don't have a lot of time to get a wrist shot. People are moving, you're moving. Don't know about the lighting.
People don't have the patience to.
Yeah, you don't really get a lot of time, and so he delivered a pretty big story, and it's nice, and like the memory of kind of remembering what in each interaction kind of is also impressive. Not every single one has description, but. It's nice to kind of look at and see a bit of variety. Yeah. So, yeah.
You're right about the headline. I'm just having a bit of a scroll now. It is wild to say 140 plus. Like, what is this?
Yeah, like that's the selling point almost. I think it's good enough.
I mean, time on site.
Yeah. I mean, it looked like a fun time.
A lot of, I'm assuming this is the Tag Heuer SponCon?
No, it's a lot of Rolex.
There's a Porsche, a lot of Porsche. There's a lot of Carreras. I've just scrolled past.
There is quite a few Carreras. Jerry was wearing, there's actually like a fair bit of, but honestly, I mean, Tag Heuer probably sponsor half the people, racing there and a lot of the team cars. I wouldn't be surprised. They seem to be getting pretty grassroots with that sort of thing.
This is the fun new game of Watch Media. Is this sponsored or not?
Yeah. Anyway, this guest is not sponsored, but it is a cool chat. We're going to talk about work at Breitling. Been pretty high up, pretty influential there with the design, and I think everyone can agree that they've made like had a bit of a turning point. Also, the new brand, the side project, which is absolutely booming. You probably saw it on social media. It went crazy. He just announced it, announced details and released kind of pictures. It's gone crazy. So I think it's time to get Sylvain on, Felix.
Absolutely. Today, we're talking to Sylvain Berneron, who is not only Breitling's creative director, but also the founder of his own watch company named Berneron, after himself. He has recently unveiled his first watch, the Mirage. Welcome to OT, Sylvain. How are you this lovely morning?
Good morning, Andrew. Good morning, Felix. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the OT podcast. And congratulations on the over 200 episodes. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much. We'll talk about your own watch, very, very soon. But first, I want to talk about your role at Breitling for a second. And mostly, I want to talk about the fact that you can wear these two hats and have the freedom to be in charge of, Breitling's creative direction and be doing your own thing as well. How is this possible?
Yes, it's quite unusual. First, I should mention by the time this podcast airs, my role would have changed at Breitling. I've been recently promoted Chief Product Officer at Breitling. That means I handle the entire scope from marketing, strategy, design, movement development, casing development, and prototyping. So now we have my team and I, the entire resources required to think about a product and then make it happen during the whole conception and the realization of the prototype. So I'm very blessed. I've been working with George Kern for 10 years now, since Richemont back then.
Right.
We've more than doubled the turnover of Breitling within 5 years. Something I would not have believed if you would have pitched it to me 5 years ago, to be honest. So the growth of Breitling has been nothing sort of exceptional. And now we want to take it even further, which is why we've been restructuring the company heavily in terms of hierarchy. And now regarding Berneron, I've been working for big brands for 15 years as an industrial designer. But nonetheless, I do have a strong fine art education that I received from my mother. And after 15 years of big conglomerate career, I felt the need to do something for myself. And some people may ask, okay, but you're a designer. Why don't you just have fun in your job? The reality is I never wanted to pour my own taste into into the companies I worked with, because I believe as a designer, we are here to serve the brand. So if it comes to Breitling, I spent months with Fred Mandelbaum, who is our brand historian, so that he could teach me what Breitling is and what would be relevant for the brand. I think that's a mistake designers should not make, trying to please themselves through an existing brand. So I've never done it. I insisted very hard with my team so that we are all here to serve the brand and not to have fun for ourselves. So as a result, if you want to express yourself personally, I had no other choice really but to ask George if I could make my own brand on the side. It was not an easy discussion because, as you know, the watch industry is quite stiff in that regard. But I have to applaud George for his open-mindedness on that topic. So he gave me the permission. It's actually written black and white in my contract that I'm allowed to do pieces under my own name. Especially for those who have seen our Instagram account, Berneron, these products have nothing in common with Breitling pieces because all the good ideas that I have for modern sports watches and technical products, I already give them to Breitling. But I had this very strong wish to explore, to go into the unknown, and to push the boundaries of creativity. Like there are so many territories we haven't touched yet, and which big brands would not dare to go into, and we could talk why further into this discussion. But what I'm doing with Berneron is something we actually could not do with Breitling.
Yeah, I mean, it's very different. I think an important question and distinction I want you to make before we get too far into either, Breitling or Berneron, the watch brand, is your take, because your background is, industrial design, product design, and you're obviously in a creative role now. But I want to know what you think the difference is between a watchmaker and a industrial designer, like yourself.
Yes, and it's a question I asked myself when I started this project. I was like, okay, if I'm about to create, to be frank, I didn't want to create a brand in the beginning. It just happens that I had to do it in order to have a medium to express myself. So I've been strongly encouraged by collectors to put my name on the dials. They told me you have to own it. So I was like, okay, because that's also something as a designer you use to hide yourself behind a fancy name, if you like, which sometimes is actually much easier. But I've been pushed to use my own name, which I did. And the difference between the two is so by the two, I mean between a designer and a watchmaker. I have friends like Xavier de Tréchapi, like Simon Brett. They are technical guys. This is where the skills are, and they have all the legitimacy to reinvent escapement architectures, to reinvent main train wheels and technical components of the movements. On my end, I believe I am more in the camp of industrial designers such as Rupert Emerson from Cartier in the 60s, like Gilbert Albert in the late 90s, and even Eric Giroux in some sort in the modern age. And we explore a different part of the spectrum, which can be shapes, textures, proportions, and what kind of emotions you would get from a piece in a more intuitive way. It's not a technical parti pris, if you like. So, and I asked myself when I created Berneron, okay, I come 5 centuries after the first clock, more than a century after the first wristwatch.
Sure.
Why should people care? And I better have a good goddamn answer to that question. Like why this watch should be looked at, and why would it be worth to talk about it? And the Mirage is an execution of, how could I put it, a lot of frustrations that I've built in my industrial career. And I'll take a simple example. If you have a kid and you tell him in a house, you can go everywhere, but do not open that door. And you keep telling him that, do not open that door. You can do whatever you want, but do not open that door. Guess what happens? Of course, the kid is going to open the door at some point, yeah? And the door that I've been asked not to open was to forget about manual one movement because they are not commercial. It's about forgetting the extensive use of precious metal because these are not good for the turnover of the company. It is to not break symmetry because that kills the versatility of a design. And of course, I obeyed these rules in my professional career because as I said in the beginning, I'm here to serve the brand.
Yep.
But now that I am on my own, I gladly open the door wide open, and I jump into these problematics because I simply want to see what happens when you embrace these problematics. And this is where it connects strongly with my artistic education. Any artistic endeavor is actually taking a constraint and transforming it into an opportunity. So I take a manual wine movement, I do break the asymmetry, I venture into asymmetric movements. So for our listeners, the Mirage is a shaped watch. It doesn't have any axis of symmetry, any straight line. And this is because the movement is actually shaped. I have developed a lot of movements in my career, and it's now, as I see it, it's always a matter of compromise. Either you want to go thin and small, and you would damage the chronometry of the movement and its performance, or you want to emphasize the performance, and you would end up with a quite large and sick movement. These are the laws of physics. In my case, when I drew the layout of the movement myself, and I was like, okay, how about we break the constraint of the circle? And I decided to let the mechanic go free, if you like, on the main plate. So I have this large flying barrel, which has a power reserve of 3 days. This large barrel actually decentered the axis of the crown on the main plate. I also wanted a large balance wheel like a pocket watch. And I wanted the movement to be very thin. So this is the movement is 2.3 millimeters thick, which is not
it's very thin.
World record. It's not world record breaking, of course, but in the realm of regular watches, it's really thin. And this movement also has two characteristics. It's made of gold. So the main plate and the bridges are made of 18 karat gold, which is, it may not sound like it, but it is actually a very strong constraint on top, because very few suppliers, if none, produce gold component movements, gold components for movements. And the third thing, this movement has what I called an inverted end set, which means on the dial side, you have the hour hand on top of the minute instead of the opposite, like on a normal watch.
Sure.
And this has a strong impact on the overall proportion of the watch because you have the shortest hand on top, which means you can drop the profile of the glass much sooner onto the case. And as a result, the Mirage is a watch that is 7 millimeters all in, and the visible metal band is less than 5 millimeters. It's 490.
Yeah, it is so sleek and thin. And I think when people see the images, obviously when this comes out and you reveal the full watch, they'll kind of get an appreciation for the visual description you just gave, which I think is lovely. I'm curious to know though, when you're sort of, talking about compromises and, almost you took it on as a challenge, and I'm picturing you having the vision of this watch in your sketches and in your CAD models. And was it, whereas other kind of, inverted commas, watchmakers kind of chase that movement development and tourbillons and all that, and accuracy and that sort of stuff, is it fair to say that you were and are more of a design focused, brand and I guess, product designer? Like you wanted to create a watch that fit within these parameters to achieve the aesthetic that you had in mind? Is that a fair kind of thing to say?
Yes. And I even dabbled down on this philosophy because in my movement, I decided to use traditional Swiss leather escapement. And that also I explained to the collectors that I am not a watchmaker. I am not a technical constructor. Therefore, it is not my role to reinvent the wheel, if you like. I leave that to the Caries, the François Paul Jaume, the Simon Brett of the world. This is their field, and I do not have the legitimacy to venture into it simply because I would be selling someone else's skills in the product if I would try to do that. But on the other hand, I do have the skills to take another angle on things, if you like. And for example, making shaped movements that making shake movements that take the full potential of their asymmetry. So, for example, the Mirage movement is quite a heavy hitter in terms of performance because it is very thin and yet it has a 3 days power reserve, and this is something you cannot have otherwise unless you break the symmetry. You know what I mean? I would have had to go much thicker or much bigger if I wanted to achieve that performance. And no one ventures into this for two reasons. First, in terms of industrial perspective, you do not want to lock your movements into a single design, because if you do not sell this design, then you are stuck with a movement that you can't use elsewhere. So all my colleagues, for example, at Breitling, which are friends as well, told me, you're crazy to make this movement. If you don't sell your watch, you won't be able to reuse the movements.
Sure.
And every other watch brands, they can decouple the two, which actually lowers dramatically the industrial risk you take in terms of production. But the Mirage is the strict opposite. It's a perfect blend of art and technique together, and the movement and the case are married, and you cannot decouple them.
Yeah, I think that's really a really cool approach, actually, and it's something I always respect when brands make sort of shaped movements that are paired with the design very intentionally. I find it really interesting. So in the sort of the sheet you've sent over, you've also been really upfront about what elements in the movement are shared, that you've outsourced and are shared to sort of bought from someone else, like the escape wheel and the hairspring and all those really specialized parts that would be ridiculous to have made exclusively for yourself at your scale. Am I clear in thinking that, so all of the elements of this watch you've outsourced the production and the assembly and the finishing, or are you getting sort of hands-on with the tools with any elements beyond the design?
No. So in terms of production, I indeed outsourced everything. So I drew the movement myself, and I partnered with a company well known here in Neuchâtel called Le Cercle des Horlogers. Mm-hmm. They recently made the new micro rotor for Louis Vuitton, the tambour. They also made the minute repeater for Jean-Claude Biver. It's a company that is 10 years old already. They are former employees from Audemars Piguet and Renaud Papy. In the name of Nicolas Heron and Alain Schisser. They are good friends of mine. I partnered with them because from my experience at Breitling, I also know if you decouple all the tasks, for example, if somebody makes the technical plans, a second person produces the case, and a third person assembles it, when something goes wrong, it's never the fault of anybody. Because they will say the plan was wrong, or it has been not produced as required, or the watchmaker damaged it while assembling it. So in my scale, I cannot afford this kind of troubles, because it would simply kill the project in the egg, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which is why I went to Le Cercle des Horlogers. I gave them the concept. We spent more than a year together fine-tuning the architecture and make all the fine choices. And now they are in charge of taking their technical construction into production and into assembly. So they will deliver me functioning movements at the end. And this way, if something goes wrong, guess what? It can only be their fault, right? Yeah. And I think it is important while making products that people have ownership in some of the part of the process.
Yeah, one thing that I find fascinating in sort of your dual roles, which are sort of very similar in this sort of, you're designing and creating a product from scratch essentially, but on massively different scale. So for this, you're producing a couple of dozen watches a year, maybe a couple of 100,000 at Breitling. What are the sort of the frustrations or the joys in working in these different scales? Is there anything at Berneron you're like, oh, I wish I could just do this like I do at Breitling, or vice versa?
Yes, of course they are. And I find it very rich. And again, I'm very privileged to have the chance to be able to do both. As far as I know, I think I'm the only guy in the industry who can hold an executive job in one of the big watch brands, and he's allowed to do his own thing on the side. As you said, the difference between the two is massive. At Breitling, we produce almost 300,000 pieces a year. So it's a big boat. The financial consequences involved are immense. And on the other side, with Berneron, I committed to produce 24 pieces per year in 2 metals. So I do 12 yellow gold pieces and 12 white gold pieces, which results in a production of 2 pieces per month. So I produce, and if you take a comparison, for example, Rolex is making 1 million pieces a year, as far as I know, roughly. So with Berneron, I will produce as much in a year that Rolex would produce in 30 minutes. That's the scale we are talking about.
Yeah, on that. So we talked a little bit about the allocation and sort of the phase that you're at, and you've kind of mentioned a bit of pressure from watch collectors, and that would be people that have sort of committed to that first allocation, which is now exhausted. So those 24 for this year are gone. You've got a bit of a timeline laid out, but basically and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you've pre-sold with a 50% deposit all 24 watches to go more or less, deliver on these watches. And you've kind of mentioned already that you're chewing into the following year's allocation as well. And, you've got these limited constraints, but I am very curious because just to be frank with you, that is what, roughly $11 million in guaranteed, sales for the first year, half up front. You're kind of moving into the second year feeling, obviously confident that that's going to sell well. And, you've got a half up front to really kind of mitigate the risk of, going out and starting a business. And obviously you're still at Breitling as well, which is very good. But I mean, I kind of want to know how you feel about that early success, because that's sort of amazing. And 2, what's involved? Like, what's the plan to get these delivered and on collectors' risk over the next, couple of years?
Yes, the first thing to consider is, in order to make the Mirage and the Berneron project happen, I do need the financial stability that I get from Breitling. I should be very transparent about that. The financial commitment involved is extreme. When I started my career when I was 19 at BMW, and my father told me, save a third of your salary every month, no matter what, and in 15, 20 years, you'll be able to buy a house for your family. That's what he told me. I was like, oh, okay, all right, let's do that. 2 years ago, I was at this point where I had enough money to go to a bank and try to get a house or something. And I decided to spend that money on a watch project, all of it. So I committed 15 years of savings into this project, and the deposits of our clients do not solve the financial issue. Why? Because the movement development is a circle of 3 years, which means you have to commit before you could take any deposit.
Yes, right.
And this is so it is really an extremely risky bet. My wife Marie-Alex is supporting me big time, and she knows me very well. She knows that I would be happier with a failing creative project rather than a house, which is why I put my money into this. And it's hard to explain to people who do not have the artistic fibers, but when you are an artist, and thanks to my mother, I consider that I do have this education. You have to do it, and it's very hard to explain. People who do not have this may not understand. But if I don't create these things and get them out of my mind, I go seriously depressed. So sometimes I'm wondering if she gave me a gift or a malediction, but Nonetheless, I've never been happier since that I started developing Berneron on the side of Breitling.
Sure.
And I am also fortunate. I have, I would say, the most educated shaped collectors beside me on this project, in the names of Roni Madvani, Auro Montanari, Laurent Picciotto, all these figures that have been in the industry for more than 20, 30 years. Have seen it all, and I have their blessing. They are part of the early collectors who took an allocation for the Mirage, which in itself was already a really deep joy for me, because these guys, I mean, if you know them a little bit, like Auro and Roni, it takes quite a bit to please them. Huh? You don't surprise them just showing up with some random stuff. Huh? It takes quite a bit to get their interest going.
What was involved with that movement? So you talk about like a three-year cycle, a huge financial commitment that obviously is still ongoing. And I think, important note that, 24 watches, high price point, 10.5 million Swiss francs, right? Like a lot of money, but that you don't have anywhere near scale. And I think that's an important kind of note to just insert here, that, you don't have scale despite, a significant price point. It's not all, sunshine and rainbows at that volume. And you do sort of mention that after a couple of years, you kind of hope to hit that financial sustainability aspect. So respect for that. But I'm curious to hear about that movement development. Like you've got these really kind of strong technical skills. You've sketched out watches and movements, and you know how to kind of assemble them. But do you have, can you actually model a movement and almost test it inside the case for, obviously designers test for things like collisions, but can you actually kind of get a movement running before you've prototyped it at all? Is that something that is part of the process?
Yes, there is. We do have softwares such as Creo, Inventor, SolidWorks. These are all the softwares you would find in the industry, and you can, of course, simulate a running movement. But there is still in the watch industry a big gap between theory and practice. I saw it at Breitling every day. Despite how much energy we spend into simulations, you will never cut the step of what we call qualification in a movement. So you have to prototype one or two, see if the tolerance stacks are working, and then you have to do the homologation phase, which at Breitling we produce. So we do the tooling and we produce 100 movements to test them, and we need 100 movements so that we could make statistics. If you just have one or two and you got lucky and this one works, it doesn't mean the 10,000s you'll make next will work as well. If you need to prototype 100 movements, you need to pay the tooling for it. And if something goes wrong, then all your tooling goes straight to the bin and you have to restart.
And a lot of tooling as well, right? Like a lot of parts, that's not, it's not the one tool.
What I mean by tooling is if you have 400 components in a movement, you probably need, I would say, 30, 40 tools and molds that you need to make. And these tools cost roughly 50 Gs each. So it's a massive investment. For Berneron, I do the same on a smaller scale, of course, because my movements will be assembled by master watchmakers, which means I do have the chance these guys are able to rectify parts and to fine-tune them together. So it's a very different assembly method than the one we have at Breitling.
Right.
But nonetheless, I do have to prototype. I do have to pay the cost up front. And it's the most scary thing I've done in a pragmatic manner. If I give you my day to day, every month I'm spending a multiple of my Breitling salary on production cost for the Mirage. So it doesn't take rocket science. My farmer brain is completely panicked because it doesn't take rocket science to go, okay, if I make 10 a month and I spend 50, how long will this last, right?
Yeah. Well, I think you're in this for the long run. I mean, Felix and I obviously agree you're in this for the long run. Like you can tell this is going to be a very big thing in a short amount of time.
That was sort of my next question. Like you've been upfront about the next 2 or 3 years of production. You're producing this sort of 24 pieces quantity. What's the longer vision? Are you hoping to move into a offer subscription model? Are you hoping to have sort of different models or greater production? What's the dream or the goal?
So for the Mirage, I committed to produce 24 pieces for 10 years, actually. This will be the A series. So in total, it's going to be 240 pieces. This is the minimum number required to have the financial critical mass in order to even be a solid project for a movement maker. Because let's face it, if I wanted to order 10 movements, the price would be 3, 4, 5 times, and the Mirage is already expensive enough. Like its final price will be 55,000 Swiss francs for the long run, which I mean, it is already very expensive, and I know it. But these are the consequences of a very low production. It's a full gold construction. This is something I haven't mentioned, which means the movement, the case, the dial, the hands, the buckle, and even the spring bars, everything is made of 18 karat gold. And this was my wish to reconnect to some of the pieces that have been made in the 70s and 80s, like Piaget, for example, used to make this sort of watches. We no longer make them anymore. And when I see the price I pay for each component, I understand why. So just to give you an anecdote, the spring bars for the Mirage are made in 18 karat gold, and they cost 150 Swiss francs each.
Wow.
So only in the watch you have 450 Swiss francs of spring bars,
You're a
which
madman.
is. And the supplier told me the same, to be honest with you. And he almost screamed at me. He was like, "I've never done this in 30 years. Why would you do this? Nobody is gonna see them." And he was like, "You plain stupid. Why do you want to do that?" And I'm talking as supplier in the Jura, so these guys are quite upfront. Yeah, if they think you're stupid, they will tell you straight to your face. But
is a gold spring bar less, because gold is obviously a softer metal, is it easier to bend, or is it less reliable than steel?
Okay, so here we go. To explain that, I have to go in the rabbit hole of technique, geeky stuff.
Sure.
A traditional spring bar, you start from a tube, then you put a spring in the middle, then you put 2 heads on the sides, and you would press the tube on its extremities so that the heads would not come out, if you will. But the middle of the spring bar is then completely empty because you have the spring in the middle.
Yep.
My spring bars are a higher level of technical construction, in the sense that we start not from a tube, but from a full cylinder of gold. We make 2 holes, so we have 2 springs, not 1 but 2, and the middle of the spring bar is actually a full block of gold. And then the 2 heads, when they compress together, they would touch the middle part in the middle, and it would become a solid axe again. And with this construction, I'm allowed to have, we have then gold spring bars, which actually have, in the same dimensions, a much higher structural integrity than a tube spring bar.
Fascinating. That's cool. That's fascinating.
But again, that's the reality. 1 spring bar, 150 Swiss francs is plain ridiculous. And the supplier told me, it was like, nobody is going to see them, Sylvain. Why do you want to do this? And I told him, look, listen, Christian, see it as an offering to God. That's what I told him. And
can I ask you this? I look at this watch and it's lovely looking, and it's really speaks to that sort of, more obscure, not symmetrical design that I think a lot of people really like right now. Picture the crash in your head, that sort of design energy for people listening. And you have this unique background of being at Breitling, which, as you said, makes 300,000 watches a year, which is an enormous amount. You've seen the impacts of scale and MOQ and actually doing things at economies of scale, and also you're very across doubling revenue through improving design and all the work you've done at Breitling. Is there part of you that kind of wants to make this more commercial, or would consider doing stainless steel, or this is not something that you want to kind of scale up to that sort of point, or to sort of change the price point? Like, is this like a deliberately kind of special and limited endeavor, and you kind of plan on keeping it that way?
So the long run for Berneron, within 10 years, I'd like to have developed 4 or 5 new calibers. I have plenty of ideas in the tank to explore more. I wanted to start with the simpler movement to express a brand DNA and a brand vision. But I'd like to venture into a jumping hour, dual time, complete calendar, tourbillon. Of course, this is the goal. But in terms of quantity, I do not want to increase too much. This is also more, I should say, a personal take as a citizen. I'm Gen Y. I see Gen Z coming, and I have these feelings that we don't need to produce that much stuff. I'd rather produce very little to the best of what I can do, simply because it clearly shows, if you look at the environment, the stress, the speed at which we all work at. So this is not going to be an happy ending. We have to slow down. We have to. So I'd rather make 24 pieces a year to a stupid level of commitment, because this is really what it is. What I'm doing is an act of love and devotion. Nobody nobody who would do a proper business plan would accept to venture into this, because it's way too risky. You have many other much simpler, easier ways to make money. So the Mirage is definitely not that. And that's what I said to the others, to the supplier again. Keep coming back to it, because he's the most rational guy I work with. And he mocks me all the time with this. And I told him, look, Christian, it's an act of love and devotion. See it as an offering to God. And when you make an offering to God, you don't discuss stupid budget, right? Yeah. You make the best of what you can do. And because I can't control the output, right? So my only wish is that when I will have the first Mirage in my hand, if I'm happy with it, that's enough for me to show it to the world or to other people. That's the commitment I'm doing. And of course, it's a complete different pursuit, endeavor than what I'm doing at Breitling, which is we have a clear goal in mind. I need that product at that price point, in that quantity, delivered at that date.
Yeah.
And you retro-engineering your modus operandi to make sure you hit the target. Completely different philosophies. Then I've been criticized, of course, by some watch enthusiasts who told me, we love your project, but why is it that it can only be accessible to the 1% of the highest collectors, because it is so expensive? And to be honest, I wish it would be cheaper. But even if I would make the Mirage in steel, it would go back down from 55 to maybe 40,000.
Yeah.
Why? Because the movement is stupidly expensive.
Yeah, and the R&D and no, that makes sense. It's just a thought, given you're on the extreme other side of the spectrum.
One thing I'd like to follow up on, you said you had sort of a pipeline of additions and complications in your head, and that the Mirage was the initial expression of the brand identity. Is it sort of, will it be centered around that concept of asymmetry?
No. It won't. But the philosophy of Berneron is to put the finger on some things that nobody touched before. That's the only plan. I want to venture into really the unknown. So I already have the second concept for the second piece in mind. It will be very different from the first one, for 2 reasons. First, because I really want to do that concept. So if you look at the Mirage, if we speak about three dimension construction, you have three axes. You have X, Y, and Z. Z is the vertical axe, and X and Y are the ones on a flat surface. The Mirage is very thin, which means the Z axis is heavily locked, if you will. I wanted the watch to be very flat, but I went very free on X and Y, which is why it is completely asymmetric, and you have no axis of symmetry, no straight lines. So this was the creative spectrum that I framed for myself. The second piece will be the opposite. I will lock X and Y, and I will free Z, which means the watch will grow in height on your wrist, and you will wear some sort of a sculpture if you want. I should not tell more about it right now. Yeah, but I'm right now I'm facing strong no's at suppliers, to be frank with you. So I'm investigating already, discussing with case suppliers and movement makers to make this project happen, and they keep telling me that it is again a very stupid idea and that I should not be doing it. But
that's nice of them, isn't it?
I should also speak about this, the endeavor. Max Busser, for example, we meet a few times a year together, and he gives me great advice on how to get this kind of project rolling. And we both agree on the fact that you have to be extremely stubborn in the beginning. You have to close your ears and quiet all the outside noise to pursue these kind of projects, because if you listen to people, they will make you stop. They will tell you, look how expensive it is, look how risky it is, and look, if you fail, what will happen? Because they are right. The consequences are very scary if this goes wrong. But again, like I said in the beginning, I think the watch industry will develop in two axes. I think the 10 biggest brands, and we could say Rolex, Cartier, Omega, Longines, TAG, IWC, Tudor, and Breitling, of course, you would have these 10 big brands that will eat 90% of the cake, if you like. And on the other side, I see a great future for the wild independents. You see, Simon Brett and Xefdet and myself, we have positive response of what we on what we do, and that shows that there is a space for people that are truly passionate and truly devoted to their cause. Same goes for Kari Voutilainen. The guy has 8 years of waiting list, and their watches are twice as more expensive than mine.
Yeah.
So there is definitely a space for it. But of course, the level of risk involved and the commitment required to survive in that part of the industry is tremendously high. Yeah.
So Georges has he been like a supportive kind of mentor figure? Is he excited about this? Is he a customer? What's his take on all of this? Because he's obviously very savvy when it comes to the world of watches.
I have to thank George, because if he had not agreed, I would not have been able to do it. So that's the first thing to say, and I keep repeating it to everybody. The only parallel to my situation that I know is actually in the fashion industry. In the fashion industry, it is much more accepted that a creative director can have his own label on the side, and it doesn't bug anybody, right? If you look at Virgil Abloh, for example, he had his own label and he would work for Louis Vuitton, and nobody complained about it. But for some reason, in the watch industry, it is considered treason to make your own watches on the side. But George knows what I'm doing. He knows that this has no concurrence whatsoever with Breitling, and therefore he lets me do it. Of course, he reminds me every week that I should be very sharp on the Breitling business, which I do, of course. As a result, my life for the past 2.5 years has been working 7 days a week. So I work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for Berneron, and I work the second half of the week for Breitling. And that's also coming back. There is not only the money, there is the time spent, the sacrifice that my wife has to make, also dealing with my absence, of course.
Yeah.
And so yes, but at the end, again, I'm happy with where the Mirage is at right now. I think it is a product that doesn't exist yet on the market. Why? Because it is the first shaped watch that takes its asymmetry from the inside. If we compared to a Crash earlier in the conversation, the Crash is a jewelry work, if you want. Rupert Emerson drew a free shape, and then he gave it to the watchmaker. The watchmaker had to deal with whatever space was left inside to place a movement.
Yeah.
And as a result, you have a watch, and you probably know that, Felix and Andrew, these kind of watches are often mocked in collectors' circle as fashion watches because they have a serious lack of watchmaking substance in them. The movements are quite basic, no finishing, close case backs. It is not, so-called serious watchmaking in terms of technique, I mean.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that, because your approach to watchmaking with this shaped movement and the cohesive design, the first comparison I thought about was actually Chanel, which has a very, obviously not with the J12, but their sort of higher end watches, they take a similar approach. It's, one movement design per watch design. And it's again, a really high intensity, cost intense sort of approach. So there's a lot of interesting parallels there between, the autonomy of designers and, maybe that fashion approach is the way, a future that, the watch industry could head down.
Yes, and because at the end of the day, let's not forget watches are no longer tools. And this is the case since the quartz crisis 50 years ago. And that opens the doors for many different ways of expressions. The goal, I think we all buy watches to have emotions first and foremost, because if what you're looking after is pure performance, you'd buy an Apple Watch Ultra. Let's face it. So this is why I think designers will have a bright future in the watch industry, because we will probably get closer to jewelry in some sense, having a lot more freedom to try to build emotions. But coming back on the Mirage, it also have, unlike a Crash, in my opinion, a strong connection to traditional watchmaking. And why is that? Let's imagine you haven't seen the product yet. I could describe it to you saying that I've made a time-only watch with a small second at 6 o'clock on the dial. The movement is hand-wound. The watch is very thin, and it is on a laser bracelet. So laser strap. If I describe you this piece, you could very well see a Patek 96, for example, from the 30s, a very traditional watch. And when you open your eyes and you see the Mirage, it's obviously a completely different take on that architecture. And to me, this is where the DNA of the brand is and exists. This is our take on a traditional architecture. And that shows who we are and what we stand for.
I love it. Love it, Sylvain. Well, look, at this point, I want one, and I guess I'm going to have to figure out how to afford one. Berneron, @Berneron on Instagram. 2023 allocation sold out. There's a couple left for 2024. Realistically, guys, by the time this comes out and we blow Berneron into the stratosphere, if not another galaxy, it's going to be 2025. But these are incredible watches. We're lucky enough to have kind of seen the finished product already. So they're really, really cool. Sylvain, one thing we ask all of our guests, which I am sure you know and are well and truly prepared for, is a completely unrelated watch recommendation or suggestion at the end of an interview. It can be something you've read, watched, listened to, enjoyed doing, but it's something that you're enjoying that you think the people listening right now would also enjoy. So what have you got for us?
It's an unusual one, but something that helped me a lot during the past 3 years and even before. It's whenever I struggle with something, I have one method. I either walk it out or run it out. And that's the only thing I do not compromise on. I run 3 times a week. I go to take some walks with my wife, because that helps me being centered all the time. Because, and I think in our lives, all of us, doesn't matter which job you have. Society right now goes so fucking fast. It is scary. Like, it is my job. I'm a creative director in the watch industry. Even I can't keep up with how much stuff gets released every week. It's insane. And as a designer, I started 15 years ago. You could easily take 1 hour a week, go through a few different websites, and you would be aware in deep details about what's happening in the entire industry. At the speed we go now, I do believe it would take 2 days a week to read the blogs and the websites and everything. 2 full days just to stay on. Yeah, exactly.
So you got to stay centered or balanced, like the Mirage.
Yeah. So my advice to anybody, if you encounter problems, whatever they may be, just walk it out. Just go outside, walk an hour. It won't solve the problem, but it will make you deal with it in a much more composed manner. And that helps me a lot, really a lot, because every week I end up in a situation. I'm like, okay, how am I going to solve this? And sometimes in one day, just my Breitling role, I get 120 emails per day on average.
Yeah.
How many?
Then I have Berneron to deal with. Berneron, I'm on my own, obviously, so I have to handle the suppliers, the collectors, the development, the administration of a small company, all of it. So sometimes I have days where, it's just way too much, way too much, too many meetings, not enough time, struggles either on one hand or the other. And the only way I've been able to go through this without panicking or having a nervous breakdown, to be honest, burnout, literally, is I walk it out. And it does work. It sounds stupid because, and I have to thank my wife for this advice, because she pulls me into it. Sometimes when I start to get stressed or even aggressive, it can happen when you're very stressed. She would put my running shoes into my face and said, please, take the door, go run an hour, and you'll be better when you'll come back. And it does work very well, I must say. So
There we go. Words to live by. Thank you so much for joining, Felix, and I will link up everything we've talked about. We really appreciate you taking the time and being so open with us.
Thank you very much, guys, for the time to discuss. Again, congratulations. In your case, I think COVID has been a blessing. We would not have had the OT podcast without it. This is yet to show again that any constraint can become an opportunity. So in this case, you guys are true artists, because instead of, crying, you took a constraint and transform it into an opportunity. I hope to do the same with my project.
I have no doubt.
Yes, I wish you guys the best of luck. I hope we'll have the pleasure to meet if you come next year for the big yearly shows. That would be amazing.
Yeah, hopefully.
And,
amazing. That's very nice of you. Thank you.
Let's stay in touch.
Andy, Sylvain Berneron, incredible, by the way, that he has those 2 jobs. Like, I find that amazing, and I find it his attitude towards watchmaking is refreshing, and I wonder if it's gonna, you're gonna see that sort of side hustle, flexible working mentality become more of a thing even in Switzerland, which seems to take these things pretty traditionally. But we will link everything up. Andy, what should people do to celebrate and honour the success of OT the podcast?
There's a few things. The first one is a 5-star review on your platform of choice. The second thing is to tell your family, friends, people that you meet on the street, just refer us, spread the word. You can also jump in our Discord for item number 3 on your OT shopping list. We will link that up like we always do. And if you ever want to get in touch with us, you can do so on social media at ot.podcast, or you can email us. We'll link up our email. And of course, just keep on listening all the way through. And Felix, that's my checklist.
We've got nothing else to say. We'll be back next week, I guess.
Next week-ish, we will see you all in the ears then.
Bye.